how you doing? Well, I'm here to do a little video today. Gonna do a special video. I'm actually in Asheville, North Carolina. This ain't New York, but I'm here passing through doing shows. It's gonna be pretty cool. So I figured why not read up a little bit on the neighborhood and the town and the city and you know, talk about the history. So that's what we're gonna be doing. Today, guess who my camera woman is? My mom. Mom, how you doing?
Great.
All right, great. Well, we're gonna be doing a little video. Yep, she's doing me the solid. But before we start, guys, check out the Patreon. Huge help. That's how we fund these things. That's how keep the lights on, baby. That's why I make my mama proud. Also, to like and subscribe. You get the thing. We're gonna be talking about a lot of history, man. There's so much cool history here. It's a beautiful town. We're gonna cover as much as we can in as short amount of a time as we can. So, I don't know. What are you, mom? You ready to do this?
Ready?
Let's go. All right, so I'm sitting here next to the French Broad River. Well, that's not actually true. I'm actually just sitting in a park, but French Broad River was too far for me to go. I didn't have time, but you get the point. The French Broad River is actually the main river that goes through Asheville or near Asheville. You may be thinking, Tom, is it named the French Broad River because some landowner was trying to impress a lady from Paris? No. It's actually named the French Broad River because it is the broad river that goes into what used to be French territory. French used to own parts of the United States. Now, keep in mind, everything west of the Appalachian Mountains was considered off limits to settlers because of the Proclamation of 1763 under the British. They said that was for the Native Americans. One of the reasons why the Native Americans were hoping the British would win the American Revolution, they didn't. So in 1784, actually the first white settler, his name was Samuel Davidson, actually settled in that area. There's actually a plaque commemorating the first white settler. Pretty interesting. You know, I guess some things don't age well, but it's still there up in the mountains. You can go check it out and take pictures with it. Although that'd be kind of a weird tourism destination for you. Keep in mind it was the Cherokees who lived in this area and still actually live in the eastern band of the Cherokees, has a reservation here in North Carolina as well as a little further west in Oklahoma. So the Trail of Tears, the ones who stayed back from the Trail of Tears, they're the ones who inhabit that today. It's actually named Asheville after a man, last name Ash. There's actually a huge rock next to City Hall to commemorate it. It used to be named Morristown, actually for a legislator in the hopes of making this the county seat, which they did. And it was actually Buncombe County. Now, Buncombe County was huge. It incorporated what is today 12 counties, so it's a giant area. Today has been split up. And in fact, a U.S. legislator for this area, for the Buncombe County area, named Felix Walker, was trying to go up and give a filibuster speech while they were trying to decide on whether Missouri should be admitted as a slave state or not. And he said he wanted to make a speech for Buncombe. And everyone's like, dude, stop wasting time, you're stalling or whatever. They're calling it Buncombe. You know, Buncombe, B-U-N-K-M, was what it basically evolved into. So if you ever hear that word, it comes from Buncombe County. Huh? Kind of interesting. Another thing to keep in mind is that there was actually, the first major kind of industry passed through here was driving, cattle driving. So they built this huge thing called the Turnpike, the Buncombe County Turnpike in 1828, and it's what allowed people to drive cattle, drive, you know, pigs and turkeys. So, you know, you have cowboys, but also piggy boys and turkey boys, the less glamorous version. So yeah, all of that is the early history here. We got to keep moving, man. I just wanted to get that out of the way. Let's keep it moving. This is weird. Okay, so there is a few very important people who made Asheville what it is today. We'll start right here. I'm actually at the top of the hill right now, next to what is called the Battery Park Hotel. This is the second version of it. The first one was built by Franklin Cox, and it was actually like 7 stories higher up. Really cool place. He was friends with William and Maria Vanderbilt. Very important because Maria Vanderbilt ended up bringing her son here, George Vanderbilt, who when he came here in the late 1880s fell in love with the place. So much so that he built Biltmore Estate in the next 6 years, buying up 125,000 acres, building this gigantic 250-room mansion. Big deal because he also brought lots of famous architects and builders, including Frederick Law Olmsted, Raphael Guastavino, who designed the church right behind us right now, the St. Lawrence Basilica. So lots of people, this is a very important thing. Now, the son of Cox sold this building to E.W. Grove, who was this millionaire who made his money off of tasteless tonic, which is something you took to kind of get fat and stay healthy back when they didn't understand health and medicine. But he actually, by the way, this Battery Park Hotel is the second one that Grove built here in 1924. Now, Another thing to keep in mind is this today is actually a senior center, like a senior apartments and stuff. So very nice. You get a nice view for grandma, in her Beanie Baby collection and electronic foot massagers, which is pretty cool. But Grove also built this behind me. This was built in 1929. This is called the Grove Arcade. It is the first indoor shopping mall in American history. That's right. So in 1929, this was the first place where teenagers could come and rip cigs while listening to Smashing Pumpkins. Pretty cool. So you can walk through it today, and it's still very pretty. And also, we're right near Wall Street, which is called Wall Street because the wall held up the hill that held the first Battery Park Hotel. Then over down the other way is Haywood Street, which is actually the 5th Avenue of Asheville back in the day. Had the Bon Marche, fancy Bon Marche department store. Also had the JCPenney, the Woolworth. By the way, JCPenney was fancy back in the day. It wasn't, where like packs of wild dogs run around in small town malls. It was actually a really cool thing, and that was Haywood Street. And you had Wall Street still today there. You had little restaurants and things. And also Guastavino is actually buried in the, he's in a mausoleum or whatever you call it at the church here. By the way, Guastavino, not for nothing, very famous architect in New York City. He actually did the tiling at Grand Central Terminal, etc. And also Frederick Law Olmsted came here as well to work on Biltmore Estate. Richard Sharp Smith, another guy who was brought here by Richard Morris Hunt, who also worked on Biltmore Estate, and Richard Morris Hunt designed the pedestal to the Statue of Liberty, another very famous architect. So Vanderbilt brought all these people over here. Even though Vanderbilt didn't do a whole lot in Asheville proper, he did influence it by bringing all these people who then worked on the city here. Now, keep in mind, from the 1880s to the 1920s was the heyday of Asheville. Everything was being built, going up, so it was awesome, great, right? Also went into a lot of debt that destroyed them after the Great Depression. But the important thing about that is all these buildings that went up stayed preserved because Asheville was broke until the 1970s. So they didn't do anything, and no one was here, they were all abandoned, so it kind of preserved them in amber, like in Jurassic Park or something, I don't know. But yeah, you have the Grove Park Mall behind me. I'm sorry, Grove Arcade behind me. And you have the Vanderbilt Towers here, which is another senior center, I believe today. It was also a hotel back in the day. And pretty cool little spot, but that's kind of the basics. You have E.W. Grove, Franklin Cox, George Vanderbilt. We'll talk about George Pack here shortly. So let's keep it moving. Okay, so now we moved on to kind of the town square. This is Pack Square, named after George Willis Pack. This is another one of the guys who kind of came and made this neighborhood and city his own. So this guy came initially to get his wife healthy. That was one of the big things that Asheville was for. Back when people thought that just nice weather got you cured of illnesses, people would come here and that's what they did. Tuberculosis, there were sanatoriums, all these kinds of things. So that was what he came for. But he kind of, once again, fell in love with the area. He donated tons of different causes, helped, basically develop the area, and this was named after him. This is kind of this city hall and the city square. You have literally City Hall to my left, stage left, I guess, and that was actually designed by Douglas Ellington, as was the Buncombe County building here, the Buncombe County Courthouse to my right. This guy, Douglas Ellington, made tons of buildings here in the area, and it's pretty cool because this is a beautiful Art Deco building. This is the city building, and he, first of all, Art Deco gets its name from l'Exposition d'Art Décoratif of Paris, France in 1925, where this style of architecture was pulled by a lot of the architects visiting from the United States, and they said, hey, this is going to be our style. They brought it back to the United States. Once the buildings were up and running, it was the late 1920s, early 1930s, then the Depression hit and it pretty much stopped. So they were built in like this 5-year window, and this happens to be one of the highest concentrations of Art Deco in the country, believe it or not. Right behind Miami Beach, they say. So that's Douglas Ellington there. And then the more conservative county courthouse is his as well. There are lots of different buildings. He actually made the S&W cafeteria building, very pretty, down at the base of Haywood and Patton Street, which we'll talk about. But really pretty like Art Deco cafeteria, back when cafeterias were all the rage. Here in Asheville, Thursday nights were the maid's night out, and everyone would flood to the cafeteria because they had no one to cook their meals. So things like that. Also, that is Patton Street, which was another kind of thoroughfare back in the 1920s, 1930s, before this city went kind of down the tubes after the Great Depression. So very interesting. You also have other buildings here. To my left, you have the Jackson Building, named after L.B. Jackson, the developer of the building. This is one of the tallest buildings in Western North Carolina, was the tallest building in Western North Carolina for a long time. You know, not that tall, but it's a beautiful neo-Gothic skyscraper, which is kind of cool, huh? You also have I.M. Pei, the I.M. Pei's architectural firm, very famous architect. He designed this building here. It was actually for the Axona company, which was a textile company, and actually it's kind of shaped like a shoe, which is kind of interesting. You also have a little area there with some animals and little statues of animals to commemorate the cattle driving and the driving industry that came through here starting in the 1820s once the turnpike was finished. So they drove all kinds of cows, they drove, you know, turkeys, hogs, thousands of them would pass through here, and you had these little inns and things pop up to kind of take care of the people who were going through. So that's kind of interesting, right? And then you have behind me, you have this little square where they have music and all kinds of things going on in the summers too, so that's kind of cool as well. But anyways, there was actually a monument here in the square, which was actually the land that was created for the square was around this monument that was built by George Willis Pack, and it was a monument to Zebulon Bayard Vance, who was a friend of Pack's. He was a governor, you know, had a little kind of tainted name. He actually would try to reinstate slavery after it was already gone, so people kind of rose up a few years ago, and the monument was actually torn down. As this big obelisk was torn down just a few years ago. You know, there's a lot more monuments and street names where that came from. In fact, Woodfin Street is actually named after a guy who was the largest slaveholder in Western North Carolina with 122 slaves, which is a lot. So they still got work to do, I guess, but it was torn down recently, so you can see that little stump there. But yeah, this is Pack Square. This is kind of the center here of downtown Asheville. A lot of history, but George Willis Pack, one of the big wigs who kind of came through here and changed Asheville during its heyday from the 1880s to the 1920s before the Depression hit in the 1930s. Oh, interesting. All right. Well, let's keep moving. This is enough. All right, so Asheville is actually home to a lot of different celebrities, writers, actors, all that kind of stuff. We'll start with the biggest one. I'm actually in front of the Thomas Wolfe Memorial, the house, right? So this house was actually built in 1883. It was actually bought by Julia Wolfe, which was Thomas Wolfe's mother, in 1906 as a boarding house. And it was here that Thomas Wolfe, the famous author, I don't know if you guys know him, he's not the guy who wrote Bonfire of the Vanities, all right? He wrote a lot of other books, but he lived here with his mother and watched her have tons and tons of boarders pass through, hundreds of people. So he kind of was inspired by this. And then when he wrote his first novel in 1929 called Look Homeward Angel, it was based on a lot of these people. So what's interesting is that this book was actually banned from the local library, and not because it did offensive things like talk about civil rights, you know, or freedom and liberty. It's because it made fun of people. They thought it was mean. A lot of the people recognized their own faces and names. Well, their names weren't in there, but they recognized themselves in his book, so they're like, this guy's a freaking jerk. We're not putting his book in the library. So it's kind of interesting how that happened. He also wrote other books down the road. Some were published posthumously, like You Can Never Go Home Again. Tell me about it. There were other authors who also passed through Asheville. People like Scott Fitzgerald, huh? You guys probably recognize his name from reading the Cliff Notes to Great Gatsby in high school. But his wife, Zelda Fitzgerald, actually died here in Asheville when she died in a fire in the actual asylum that she was living in at the time. Kind of crazy, up in Montfort, which is another part of Asheville. And lastly, you have O. Henry. O. Henry was actually William Sidney Porter, who lived here in Asheville briefly, and he went to jail for embezzlement. Go figure. But when he got out, he moved. He went to New York, and he actually, you know, spent most of his time there, but he passed through here. Pretty big name as well. He's buried here at Riverside Cemetery. And you know, you have a lot of literary history because of these guys. Some of big American names. I talked about, you know, O. Henry in other videos in New York. He lived over near Union Square, all that stuff, hung out there. But more importantly, this house was actually burned partly in 1998 during the Belcher festival here. You know, yeah, it's, you know, stuff happens, I guess, but they fixed it up and it's now a museum. You can come check it out. Pretty cool. But yeah, literary history, huh? Literary history, that's not the only history here. That's not the only celeb history, the celeb tea. We'll talk about some more here as we go. Let's go. All right, so I told you there'd be more celebs. All you people love your celebrities. I'm actually standing in front of the community theater here in Asheville, which in 1946 invited an artistic director to lead it. His name was Charlton Heston, huh? Pretty cool, big name there. So he came, lived in Asheville, directed the theater.
People got mad though because he gave all the parts, the big parts, to his wife, which is kind of messed up. His response to them was, "You can take her parts from my cold, dead hands." Right. There was other people too, like for example, Nina Simone. She went to high school here. You guys know her, very famous singer. She ended up leaving the United States for France when the whole Vietnam thing started, but an incredible, you know, powerful singer as well. Gladys Knight lived around here. She's the one who sang that song, "I'm leaving on that midnight train to Georgia." Huh? Pretty good. Another famous person is Jimmy Rogers. He was the father of country music. Pretty cool. He was here in Asheville. He's more famous for his songs of like, you know, yodelay, 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 you know, that kind of stuff. I'm not very good at yodeling, all right, relax. But he is the father of country music, so without him, you wouldn't have country stars today like Beyonce, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, other more celebs passing through here. Lots of people passing through Asheville, but yeah, kind of cool. All right, well, let's keep moving.
And we're back, guys, back in the spot. It's a pretty great history you guys want to keep in mind, this area. But we got to remember also there's a big African-American history here as well. There's an African-American cultural heritage trail through Asheville, which is one of the few of these in this part of the United States that you can kind of follow through the city of Asheville, which is pretty cool. You also have the YMI Cultural Center, established in 1893 by Dr. Edward Stevens and Isaac Dixon to serve the African-American community here. A lot of them who were building the Biltmore Estate. And, you know, Vanderbilt actually helped out with the establishment of this, but don't think he's super altruistic, because one of the big reasons he wanted this is because they weren't really allowed in Biltmore, the town, for the people who built the Biltmore Estate. So that's another thing. Another thing to keep in mind too is that a lot of high schoolers here pushed the civil rights movement forward. Now this is different from other parts of North Carolina, like Greensboro. If you guys know the sit-ins there at the Woolworth, the sit-ins were done here by high school students. They had a lot more to lose. They're younger. They're getting expelled, all these different things. And they were the ones who were doing things like the sit-ins at the Cress counter. By the way, this is interesting. They tried to, I showed you pictures of that, but they tried to do a sit-in at the Cress building, which you may have seen. And the way they blocked it was to remove the chairs. No sit-in if you can't have any chairs. That's a funny thought. That's the way that people fought back against people claiming their right as human beings, is to just take the chairs out. That'll teach them. That'll stop the river of history from flowing. But didn't, obviously. But it's kind of an interesting history here. Don't have time to get into all that stuff, so one of these days I'll do a longer video. But you know, guys, that's pretty much it, man. We covered everything. My mom helped me out. We went through a little history here, you know, and I was here doing shows, so. But I thought I'd give you a little history because I'm interested in this stuff. I read a book by Nan K. Chase, which is very good. You should check out. And I took a little tour with a woman named Sharon Farrer. You guys should look her up if you're ever in town. She's a very great, good time. If you like the video, check out the Patreon, guys. That's how I fund these things. That's how I help keep the lights on, keep the French broad flowing, I guess, and also like and subscribe. Big help too. We had ourselves a time, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know what else to tell you other than, you know, thanks for watching, making it this far. See y'all later. That's a loud car. See y'all later. That's it. Come on, you can get up now. I'm an old man.